Don't live for applause. Most people don't realize when it happened. There was no announcement, no clear decision. At some point, quietly, they began to live as if an invisible audience were always watching. Their words softened, their opinions adjusted, their silence became strategic, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, their sense of self began to depend on reaction rather than reason. The Stoics warned about this long before social media, long before public metrics of approval existed. They understood something timeless. The moment your inner life is governed by external applause, you are no longer free. You are performing, and performance, no matter how elegant, is still a form of dependence. Marcus Aurelius wrote not for readers, but for himself. His journal was private, unpolished, never meant to impress. That alone is revealing. A man with immense power, admired by millions, chose to remind himself, again and again, that praise is noise, fleeting, unreliable, dangerous. He understood that the crowd's approval could never be a stable foundation for a good life, because the crowd does not know what is good. It only knows what is pleasing in the moment. To live for applause is to outsource your judgment. It is to allow others, often strangers, often shallow, often inconsistent, to decide whether your actions have value. The Stoics saw this as a profound mistake. Value to them was not something granted. It was something cultivated. It emerged from alignment with reason, character, and virtue, not from recognition. Epictetus was even more direct. He divided life into two categories: what is up to you and what is not. Your opinions, intentions, and actions belong to you. Reputation does not. Applause does not. Approval does not. To hinge your peace on something you do not control is, in Stoic terms, voluntary slavery. You place your emotional well-being into hands that neither know you nor care for your flourishing. And yet, this is exactly what modern life encourages. We are taught subtly and relentlessly to ask, how will this be received? How will this look? Will this be liked? Over time, these questions replace a far more important one. Is this right? The danger is not that applause feels good. The danger is that it feels necessary. When approval becomes necessary, integrity becomes negotiable. You begin to shape your thoughts to fit expectations, your values to fit trends, your silence to avoid disapproval. You may still appear confident, even successful, but inwardly you are fragile, because your center is no longer within you. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself that the same mouths praising today will criticize tomorrow, not because you changed, but because they did. To live well, then, requires a kind of emotional independence, not indifference to others, but independence from their judgment. The Stoic does not despise praise, he simply refuses to need it. There is a quiet strength in doing what is right without witnesses, in choosing restraint when excess would be applauded, in remaining silent when outrage would earn attention. These moments reveal character more clearly than any public recognition ever could. Virtue, in the Stoic sense, is what remains when no one is watching. The applause of the crowd is seductive because it offers immediate validation. Virtue offers none. It often feels lonely. It often feels unrewarded. But it produces something applause never can: inner coherence, a life that makes sense from the inside, a self that does not fracture under criticism because it was never built on praise. To live for applause is to live reactively. To live for virtue is to live deliberately. One depends on constant feedback. The other depends on clarity of principle. One rises and falls with opinion. The other remains steady amid noise. This is not a call to isolation or arrogance. The Stoics were deeply social beings, but they understood that contribution is different from performance. You can serve others without needing their approval. You can speak truth without demanding applause. You can act well, even if it goes unnoticed. In the end, the question is simple and uncomfortable. If all applause disappeared, if no one noticed, praised, or affirmed you, would your actions still make sense to you? If the answer is no, then something essential has been misplaced. The Stoic path begins precisely there, reclaiming your inner authority, withdrawing your self-worth from the crowd, and anchoring your life not in reaction, but in reason. Most people assume that freedom means being able to say whatever they want, live however they want, and be seen however they want. The Stoics disagreed. For them, freedom had nothing to do with visibility. It had everything to do with sovereignty over the self. A person who cannot endure disapproval, they believed, is not free at all, no matter how admired they appear. When you live for applause, your behavior becomes anticipatory. You begin to act not from conviction, but from prediction. You predict what will be celebrated, what will be punished, what will be ignored. Slowly, your inner compass is replaced by a social one. This is why Marcus Aurelius warned against allowing the opinions of others to invade the ruling faculty. Once that happens, your mind no longer belongs fully to you. Epictetus compared this dependence to handing over your freedom piece by piece. Every time you adjust yourself to be praised, you surrender a portion of your autonomy. Every time you remain silent out of fear of judgment, you give away another piece. Eventually you may look successful, respected, even admired, but inwardly, you are governed by forces you do not command. The Stoics understood that public opinion is not only unstable but incoherent. It does not follow reason. It follows emotion, fashion, and imitation. To ground your self-worth in such a thing is to build a house on moving sand. What is praised today is condemned tomorrow. What is ignored today is celebrated tomorrow. None of this reflects truth or virtue. It reflects momentum. This is why Marcus repeatedly reminds himself of how small and fleeting reputation truly is. He reduces praise to sound waves dissolving in the air, names soon forgotten, admirers soon dead. This is not nihilism, it is clarity. When you see applause for what it is, temporary noise, it loses its power to command your behavior. There is another danger in living for applause that is more subtle but equally corrosive. It fractures the self. When your public self becomes a performance and your private self carries the weight of unspoken truth, tension emerges. Over time, this tension hardens into anxiety, resentment, and exhaustion. You are always on, always adjusted, always slightly false. The Stoic ideal is unity, to think, speak, and act from the same center, to be the same person alone as you are in public. This unity is impossible when approval is your currency. Performance requires masks. Virtue requires none. Seneca warned that it is better to displease others than to be at war with yourself. This is not a call to provocation, but to coherence. A person who stands firmly in their values does not need to announce them, defend them aggressively, or decorate them for acceptance. Their life becomes the argument. Living without dependence on applause does not mean rejecting feedback or wisdom from others. The Stoics valued counsel, but there is a crucial difference between learning from others and living for them. One strengthens the self, the other dissolves it. When criticism comes, and it always will, the person who lives for applause collapses inward. Their sense of worth is shaken because it was never internally secured. The Stoic, by contrast, examines criticism calmly. If it is true, he corrects himself. If it is false, he lets it pass. In neither case does his identity suffer damage. This is one of the greatest freedoms Stoicism offers: emotional invulnerability without emotional numbness. You can feel, care, love, and serve without surrendering your inner throne. Approval may come or go, but it does not rule you. The modern world rewards visibility, speed, and reaction. Stoicism rewards depth, restraint, and deliberation. These values are often invisible. They do not trend, they do not go viral, but they endure. They shape a life that is not constantly shaken by opinion. To live without applause is not to live without meaning. It is to place meaning where it belongs, inside the sphere of your own reasoned choice. When you act well because it is right, not because it is noticed, you step out of the performance and into authorship. You stop asking, "How will this look?" and begin asking, "Is this aligned?" That single shift changes everything. There is a moment, often quiet and uncelebrated, when a person realizes that much of their suffering has not come from events themselves, but from the imagined gaze of others. The fear of being misunderstood, the dread of being judged, the craving to be seen in a certain light. The Stoics recognized this as a self-inflicted burden, one that could be set down at any time. Marcus Aurelius speaks often about retreating inward, not as an escape from the world, but as a return to what is stable. Other people's opinions are never stable. They change with mood, circumstance, and convenience. To anchor your identity, there is to live in constant motion, never at rest. The inward life, by contrast, offers a place of stillness where values are not negotiated. Living without applause requires courage, because it often means choosing the harder path in silence. It means doing what is right when there is no reward attached. It means resisting the temptation to dramatize your own virtue. The Stoics were wary of moral exhibitionism, the urge to be seen as good rather than to be good. Once goodness becomes a performance, it loses its substance. There is a deep irony here. The more you chase approval, the more fragile you become. The more you let go of it, the more resilient you grow. A person who expects praise is easily wounded by neglect. A person who does not need praise moves freely through both admiration and disregard. Epictetus advised his students to practice being unseen, to do small acts of discipline and kindness without telling anyone, to train the soul to find satisfaction in the act itself, not in recognition. This was not asceticism for its own sake, but psychological training. It weakened the reflexive need for validation. When you stop living for applause, you regain something precious: time and energy. So much of life is wasted managing impressions, crafting narratives, and defending images. Freed from this labor, the mind becomes clearer. Decisions become simpler. You act because it is necessary, not because it will be noticed. This clarity also reshapes relationships. When you no longer need approval, you no longer manipulate or perform for it. You listen more honestly. You speak more carefully. You allow others to be who they are without demanding affirmation in return. Paradoxically, this often deepens respect, but that respect becomes a byproduct, not a goal. Stoicism does not promise comfort. It promises steadiness. There will be moments when acting with integrity costs you admiration, when restraint is mistaken for weakness, when silence is interpreted as indifference. The Stoic accepts this calmly. Misinterpretation is outside his control. His task is not to be understood by all, but to be faithful to reason. There is a particular strength in being willing to be disliked for the right reasons, not because of arrogance or cruelty, but because truth and virtue do not always align with popular sentiment. The Stoics did not romanticize rejection, but they did not fear it either. Fear belongs to those who depend. As the need for applause fades, another kind of satisfaction emerges, quieter, deeper. The satisfaction of self-respect, the knowledge that your actions are coherent, that your life is not a contradiction, that you are not betraying yourself in small daily ways. This satisfaction does not spike like praise, but it does not crash either. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself that a good person does not need to advertise goodness. Light does not announce itself, it simply illuminates. In the same way, a life governed by virtue does not need constant affirmation. It speaks through consistency. To stop living for applause is to stop living reactively. You no longer move toward noise and away from silence. You move toward what is right and away from what is false. The world may notice, it may not. Either way, you remain intact. This is the quiet revolution Stoicism offers. Freedom not through withdrawal, but through inner independence. A life no longer shaped by the clapping of hands, but by the steady voice of reason. One of the final illusions to dissolve is the belief that being unseen means being insignificant. The Stoics rejected this entirely. Significance does not require an audience. A just action is just whether witnessed or not. A disciplined mind is disciplined in solitude as much as in public. Meaning is not multiplied by visibility. In a world increasingly oriented toward display, choosing substance over spectacle is a radical act. It restores depth to life. It returns authorship to the individual. You stop curating a persona and start cultivating a character. Marcus Aurelius warns against becoming distracted by the lives and opinions of others, not because they are unimportant, but because your life is your responsibility. Attention is finite, When you spend it chasing approval, you neglect the one task that truly belongs to you, becoming a better human being. The Stoic does not withdraw from society. He participates without being possessed by it. He serves without seeking applause. He speaks when necessary and remains silent when speech would be vanity. This balance is difficult, but it is liberating. In the end, applause fades. Names are forgotten. Images dissolve. What remains is the quality of your will, the way you chose when no one compelled you, the way you acted when no one was watching. This is what endures. Do not live for applause. Live so that, in the quiet moments, you do not need it.